I do want to talk about another big story that we have been following here over the past, I would say, several days since Election Day on Tuesday. That is where Democrats swept those elections. We know Zohran Mamdani was elected the mayor of New York City. We also have Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat, who is the governor of Virginia, and governor-elect of New Jersey is Mikie Sherrill. Mamdani right now is over in Puerto Rico as he's attending a conference here just days after his election.
My final day here for Somos, celebrating the labor movement, celebrating that movement in New York City, be it Teamsters Local 210, who we stood with in their fight against management at Perigo in the Bronx, be it HTC Local 610, which stood up and just won a one-year contract with better wages and a better ability to afford life here in San Juan, and celebrating also what these last few days have been, which have been meetings with partners, whether in the council, whether at the state level, whether in leading the entirety of the state and our governor and our attorney general or organized labor, all with the purpose of delivering the affordability agenda that we ran on throughout the entirety of this campaign. I've said throughout the entirety of this campaign that this is a campaign to bring the struggles of working New Yorkers back to the focus of our politics and to ensure that City Hall is seen as a place that not only recognizes those struggles, but actually delivers on the material needs of those working people.
All right, now taking a live look here over New York City at this hour, and I do want to talk about those elections, again, just days ago here. Let's bring in Cayce Myers, professor and director of graduate studies here at Virginia Tech School of Communication. Cayce, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And first off, I want to start by asking you kind of your overall views here as you look at the elections there of several Democrats. We saw those big wins. We're talking Zohran Mamdani as well as Abigail Spanberger and then also Mikie Sherrill. What does that tell you?
Well, I think it says a couple of things. One is, and I think this is the big overarching theme in all of those races, is that economic issues really are top of mind for voters. And so all three candidates ran on economic issues, issues around affordability, issues around income, and on also inflation. And I think that they were successful in that. Now, how they did it differed, and I think this is going to present a challenge for the Democratic Party in 2026. In the two races for governor, you saw a more moderate stance, a more moderate Democratic candidate. And in New York, you saw a very far left progressive candidate. You also saw, but similar themes. Now, how that translates out into the rest of the country as a strategy going forward sort of depends, I think, largely on the location of the candidate and really the political climate that they're running in.
What about the government shutdown? When you talk about that, we heard from President Trump as well as other Republicans who said, despite any of the issues between the two parties, when you talk about who's responsible for the shutdown, that they believe that that did play a role in Republicans not winning. Your thoughts?
I think that's absolutely correct. And I think the government shutdown certainly leads into this larger discussion around economic issues. Now, you take a state like Virginia, which has a high number of federal employees, had already experienced a lot of economic issues around DOGE and federal employee reductions in force at the beginning of the year with Elon Musk, and then with the government shutdown. I think that the issue in Virginia, or sort of the outcome in Virginia, was not surprising that the Democrat won, but I think what is surprising is the margin by which she won. She was able to outperform Harris in 2024, and Republicans underperformed compared to 2024. And I think that that same kind of impact had in New Jersey and in New York City as well, although probably less so than in Virginia.
As far as what to expect here, we know, of course, that Republicans might be trying to switch up their strategy in some way as we get closer to the midterm elections. So what should Republicans in these states specifically and other states where elections will be held kind of reflect on in terms of their strategy?
I think the strategy in 26 is going to be one around the economy and one around affordability. It's also going to be, I think, largely a referendum on the Trump agenda for the last 2 years. And so we have a lot of time before we get to that election. So how that plays out really depends on how the economy is doing with Trump and how voters perceive their own personal circumstances to be. Now, I do think the Republicans are going to seize upon Mamdani in New York City, and they're going to try to paint the entire Democratic Party as sort of a party of sort of very far left progressive views. That may or may not be successful depending upon the candidates. There is a discussion that MAGA Republicanism has to be countered with this sort of left progressive answer. Some Democrats disagree with that, and that would be the case in Virginia and North Carolina and in New Jersey, where they ran a more centrist campaign. So the question is it going to be a centrist campaign or is it going to be a more progressive campaign? But I think ultimately any midterm election is a referendum on the incumbent. And right now what we see is the economy being that main focus. Now that could change as the months go on and some other issue become more top of mind.
Talking about Zohran Mamdani, again, mayor-elect there of New York City, do you believe, just based in your experience, what you know, what you've seen, that he does appear to be the future of the Democratic Party?
I'm not so convinced of that. I think that he is a candidate in a very rarefied political environment. And he's in an environment that we knew that had a high level of voter dissatisfaction around the status quo in general. Trump overperformed in New York City in 2024. And so Mamdani, I think, was able to seize on some of this larger voter dissatisfaction. So I don't know that it's really an endorsement of his policies so much it is as a referendum on the larger political climate and incumbents in general. He also had the benefit of running against very weak opponents. Cuomo had a lot of political baggage. Adams, before he dropped out, had a lot of political baggage. And Sliwa was not really a competitive candidate. He was seen more as a spoiler in that race. And so I think Mamdani was able to seize upon a larger political narrative around voter dissatisfaction and affordability, coupled with this sort of his opponents being, as they were, and was able to get a victory. Now, how that looks as the future of the party, I think really is dependent upon where the candidates are running. There are going to be some states and some elections where a more progressive candidate on the Democratic ticket is going to be able to win. But there are going to be other states, and I think Virginia is one of them, where a very progressive left-leaning candidate is not going to do as well. And so I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
When you talk about what we did see happen, of course, in New Jersey, we know that you do have a Democrat governor now. It appears that they're going to have a Democrat governor again after this next election. But what I wanted to ask you is more so about Virginia. When you talk about flipping a seat, because you have Glenn Youngkin, who is a Republican, and then essentially we do know, of course, that we do have the position now held by a Democrat. So when you go from Republican to Democrat, does that tell you anything, really?
I think that it says something about the counter-cyclical nature of elections, and particularly off-year elections. So typically the party in power in Congress and the president in an off-year election does poorly. And so I think that's been a trend in Virginia for some time. So Youngkin was elected in 2021. And he was elected largely on the issue of parental rights and education. And I think Earl Sears, who's the Republican nominee this cycle, tried to run on that same platform and recreate that Youngkin coalition, which was made up of Republicans, independents, and some Democrats. She wasn't able to do that in 2025 because the sort of the issue had changed from parental rights and education to a referendum really on the Trump administration, issues around federal government workforce reductions and the shutdown. And so I think it's very dependent upon the political climate. And I think it does matter, though I don't know that it's as impactful as some may see, that there is a switch in government from Republican to Democrat, and that the Democrats won in three high-profile races. You have to remember, though, New Jersey, Virginia, and certainly New York City, these are races that are typically going to benefit and where the Democrat has an advantage already. I think the big story is the margin by which these candidates won. But again, I think the outcome, to me, is not that surprising.
All right. Cayce Myers, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and breaking it all down. We'll be talking to you again shortly, I'm sure, as we continue to cover everything related to politics. Anything else you wanted to mention here about any of this before I let you go?
I think that when we're looking at the government shutdown and how that ends, if let's say that it ends next week or later on this year, I think that when we're talking about 2026 midterms and what the strategy is going forward, this may be a distant memory, and there are going to be new issues that emerge that are going to be top of mind to voters.
Cayce Myers, thank you as always for being here. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.